Hello, today we're reading Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, Book 1, Chapters 23 through 27. Chapter 23, the disposition of the terms. There are two methods of disposing the terms of the planets, in reference to the dominion of the triplicities. One is Egyptian, the other Chaldaic. But the Egyptian method preserves no regular distribution, neither in point of successive order nor in point of quantity. In point of order, it is defective, since it, in some instances, allots the first degree of a sign to the lord of the house, in others to the lord of the triplicity, and in others again to the lord of the exaltation. By selecting examples, this failure in order will easily be seen. For instance, if the order were regulated by the government of the houses, for what reason should Saturn take the first degrees in Libra, since that sign is the house of Venus? Or why should Jupiter take them in Aries, which is the house of Mars? If the government of triplicities were followed, for what reason should Mercury take the first degrees in Capricorn, which is in the triplicity ruled by Venus? If the government by exaltations, why should Mars take the first degrees in Cancer, that sign being the exaltation of Jupiter? And if the order were regulated even by considering the planet which possesses most of these dignities in the sign, for what reason should Mercury take the first degrees in Aquarius, in which sign he rules only by triplicity? And why not Saturn, who has government in it by house, as well as by triplicity? Or why, in short, should Mercury, who does not possess any kind of dominion in Capricorn, receive the first degrees in that sign also? The same want of order is abundantly evident in the rest of the distribution. Unequal irregularity exists in the respective quantities of degrees allotted by the Egyptians to the several terms of the planets. For it is by no means a proper nor sufficient demonstration of accuracy that the aggregate sum of all the numbers of every single planet amounts to the precise total requiring to be divided into portions of time, since, even if it be admitted that this total, collected from every single star, is correctly asserted by the Egyptians, it may still be objected that the same total, so collected by them, may be found in many other ways by interchanging the numbers in a sign. There are persons also who contend that in every latitude the same space of time is occupied in ascension by every star. This, however, is manifestly wrong, for, in the first place, these persons are guided by the vulgar opinion of the plain heights of ascension, which is totally foreign to truth, and according to which, in the parallel of Lower Egypt, the signs of Virgo and Libra would ascend each in 38 degrees and a third, and Leo and Scorpio each in 35 degrees, when it is, on the contrary, shown by the tables that the latter two signs occupy in their several ascensions more than 35 degrees each, but Virgo and Libra less. It should further be observed that those who support this opinion seem, by doing so, not only to dispute the quantity of the terms most generally received, but to be driven also to the necessity of falsifying many points, since, as it is indispensable to keep to the same total amount of all the terms together, they make use of parts of degrees, but even that contrivance does not enable them to reach the true point. The old terms admitted by many persons on the authority of the former tradition are as follows. We have a table titled The Terms According to the Egyptians. Thus, by the Egyptian distribution, it appears that the total numbers of the degrees for each planet added together make 360, viz. For Saturn 57, Jupiter 79, Mars 66, Venus 62, and Mercury 76. The method of the Chaldeans contains a certain simplicity of arrangement as to quantity and preserves an order of succession rather more conformable to the dominion of the triplicities. It is nevertheless highly imperfect, as may be easily discovered, even without being pointed out. For in the first triplicity, which the Chaldeans are also contribute to the same signs, viz. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, Jupiter, the lord of the triplicity, takes the first degrees. Venus, who rules the next triplicity, follows him, and after her in succession are Saturn and Mercury, the lords of the triplicity of Gemini, and lastly Mars, lord of the remaining triplicity. And the second triplicity, also allotted to the same signs, viz. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, Venus stands first, next to her Saturn and Mercury, after them Mars and Jupiter last. In the other two triplicities, a similar order of succession is closely followed. And with respect to the third triplicity, which is ascribed to two lords, viz. To Saturn and Mercury, Saturn is placed first in order by day and Mercury by night. The quantity of degrees allotted to each planet is also simply regulated in the Chaldaic method. It diminishes in graduation from the quantity given to the planet first in order, so that each successive planet takes 1 degree less than that which preceded it. Thus, the first planet takes 8 degrees, the second 7, the third 6, the fourth 5, and the fifth 4. By this arrangement, the degrees of Saturn amount by day to 78 and by night to 66, the degrees of Jupiter to 72, and of Mars to 69, of Venus to 75, and of Mercury by day to 66 and by night to 78, the whole amounting to 360. Of these two distributions of the terms, that of the Egyptians seems more to be relied on than the other, since it has been handed down and recommended in the writings of the Egyptian authors, and also because the degrees of the terms in nativities rectified by them as examples are universally in accordance with this distribution, while, on the other hand, neither the order nor the number of the Chaldaic method has ever been recorded or explained by any writer, not even by the writers of that very nation. The accuracy of that method is consequently doubtful, and its irregularity as to the order of placing the planets is widely open to censure. There is, however, an ancient writing which has fallen into the author's possession and which gives a rational and consistent account of the nature of the terms, of the order in which they are to be taken, and of the quantity belonging to each. It will be found in the subsequent chapter. Chapter 24, the terms according to Ptolemy. In arranging the order in which the planets take their terms in each sign, their exaltations, triplicities, and houses are taken into consideration, and whatever planet, whether benefic or malefic, may possess 2 rights of dominion in one and the same sign, such planet is universally placed first in order in that sign. In other cases, however, where it does not happen that a malefic possesses 2 rights of dominion in the sign, it is always placed last. The lord of the exaltation is placed first, then the lord of the triplicity, then the lord of the house, in regular succession according to the series of the signs, but it must again be remembered that any planet having 2 rights of dominion in the same sign takes precedence. As before mentioned, of those having only 1, in Cancer and Leo, however, the malefics occupy the first degrees, as those signs are the houses of the moon and the sun, which take no terms, and the malefics being found to have greater potency in those signs, therefore take precedence in them. Mars, consequently, receives the first degrees in Cancer, and Saturn in Leo, by which arrangement a proper order is preserved. The respective quantities of degrees for the several terms is thus determined, viz., when there is no planet found to be lord by 2 rights in the same sign, or in the 2 signs next following, each of the benefics, Jupiter and Venus, takes 7 degrees, the malefics, Saturn and Mars, take 5 degrees each, and Mercury, being of common influence, takes 6 degrees, thus completing the whole 30. Since, however, there are some cases in which a planet has always a double right, for Venus obtains the sole government of Taurus and Pisces, as the moon does not share in the terms, it is to be observed that when such double right, whether it exist in the same sign or in the signs next following, as far as it may complete a quadrant, may be possessed by any planet, that planet receives in addition 1 degree. The planets thus entitled were distinguished by points in the ancient writing above mentioned, and the degree added to the quantity of the planet which exercises a double right is subtracted from those of single right, most generally from Saturn and Jupiter in consequence of their slower motion. These terms are detailed in the following table. periodic table. Chapter 25, the places and degrees of every planet. The signs have been subdivided by some persons into parts still more minute, which have been named places and degrees of dominion. Thus, the 12th part of a sign, or 2 degrees and a half, has been called a place, and the dominion of it given to the signs next succeeding. Other persons, again, pursuing various modes of arrangement, attribute to each planet certain degrees as being originally connected with it, in a manner somewhat similar to the Chaldaic arrangement of the terms. But all of these imaginary attributes cannot be herein detailed, for they receive no confirmation from nature, and not capable of being rationally demonstrated, and are in fact merely the offspring of scientific vanity. The following observation, however, deserves attention and must not be omitted. The beginnings of the signs, and likewise those of the terms, are to be taken from the equinoctial and tropical points. This rule is not only clearly stated by writers on the subject, but it is especially evident by the demonstration constantly afforded that their natures, influences, and familiarities have no other origin than from the tropics and equinoxes, as been already plainly shown. And if other beginnings were allowed, it would either be necessarily to exclude the natures of the signs from the theory of prognostication, or impossible to avoid error in then retaining and making use of them, as the regularity of their spaces and distance upon which their influence depends would then be invaded and broken in upon. Chapter 26, Faces, Chariots, and Other Similar Attributes of the Planets. The familiarities existing between the planets and the signs are such as have been already particularized. There are also, however, further peculiarities ascribed to the planets. Each is said to be in its proper face when the aspect it holds to the sun or moon is similar to that which its own house bears to their houses. For example, Venus is in her proper face when making a sextile aspect to either luminary, provided she be occidental to the sun but oriental to the moon, agreeably to the primary arrangement of her houses. Each planet is also said to be in proper chariot or throne, or otherwise triumphantly situated when it holds familiarity with the place which it actually occupies by 2 or more of the prescribed modes of connection. For when it is so circumstanced, its influence and energy are especially augmented by the familiarity it thus holds with the sign which encompasses it, and which is similar in influence and cooperates with it. Lastly, each planet, although it may possess no familiarity with the sign encompassing it, is said to rejoice when any condition subsists between itself and other stars of the same condition, as, notwithstanding the distance between them, a certain sympathy and communication of influence is derived from their mutual resemblance. In the same manner, again, when a planet occupies a place adverse and dissimilar in condition to itself, much of its influence is dissipated and lost. In consequence of the interposition and admixture of the other different influence arising out of the dissimilar temperament of the sign by which it is encompassed. Chapter 27, Application, Separation, and Other Faculties. In all cases, when the distances between planets or luminaries are but trifling, the planet which precedes is said to apply that to which follows, and that which follows to be separating from that which precedes. The same rule obtains both in respect to bodily conjunction and to any other of the aspects before described, except that in the application and separation of the bodily conjunction, it is also essential to observe the actual latitudes of the bodies in order to receive and consider only as such a transit as may be made in the same parts of the zodiac. But in the application and separation of aspects merely, the same attention is not requisite, since all the rays are uniformly converged into one focus, that is to say, into the angle of the earth, and meet there alike from every quarter. It appears, therefore, by the whole of what has already been delivered, that the effective influence of the stars must be considered as arising not only from their own peculiar natures and properties, but also from the quality of the surrounding signs and from configuration with the sun and the angles, all which has been pointed out. The influence of each planet, however, is strengthened chiefly when it may be oriental, swift and direct in its proper course and motion, for it has then the greatest power. But on the other hand, it loses strength when occidental and slow in motion or retrograde, as it then acts with similar effect. Its influence also receives ascension or diminution from its position with regard to the horizon, as if it be situated in the midheaven or succeedent to the midheaven, it is especially strong. Likewise, if it be on the actual horizon or succeedent to the horizon, it is also powerful, particularly if in the eastern quarter. Should it, however, be below the earth and configured with the ascendant, either from the lower heaven or from any other part below the earth, its influence then becomes more languid. But if, when below the earth, it hold no such configuration, it is entirely deprived of efficacy. Thank you for listening. That's the end of Book the First. Tomorrow we will start Book the Second.